My mom gifted me a Hermes Birkin bag. She insisted that my first Hermes must come from her. My mom is a hopeless romantic, but I clearly didn't inherit that trait. I'm practical by nature. Although our family is well off, I still prefer to compare prices and look for the best value when shopping. Upon receiving the bag, I posted a photo on Facebook at my mom's urging. My roommate Meredith Seabrook immediately commented, "Where did you get it? The craftsmanship looks quite authentic." I frowned but didn't reply. However, half a minute later, her message came through. "Velvet, you should really have a chat with your boyfriend. Being short on cash isn't shameful, but gifting knockoffs is just not on." I wanted to lash out, but considering we'd only started uni recently, I didn't want to create tension. I managed to swallow my anger and calmly replied, "It's not from my boyfriend. My mom bought it, and it's genuine." After half an hour, Meredith responded with an O and a laughing emoji. Her reaction made it clear she didn't believe me. I didn't bother explaining further, thinking the matter was over. However, one night, unable to sleep, I was scrolling through Twitter when I stumbled upon Meredith's post. At 11:16 p.m. that evening, she had tweeted. The first image was a selfie, and the second was the photo of my bag from Facebook. The caption read, "Hermes from my boyfriend." I love it! I froze for a few seconds, then couldn't resist sending a screenshot to my boyfriend, William Stanworth. "Look at my thieving roommate." Despite the late hour, William replied almost instantly, "Give her a piece of your mind." I said I didn't know how, so William guided me step by step on how to comment. "Isn't this the birthday gift my mom bought for me? When did my mom become your boyfriend?" Without causing a scene, I felt a bit vindicated. When I refreshed the page, I found that Meredith's tweet had been deleted. Sharing the same dorm room, she sent me a message late at night. "Velvet, don't misunderstand. My boyfriend also bought me a Hermes bag. It'll arrive in a few days, so I just used a photo of your bag for my tweet first." I laughed to myself. She was dating a rich boy, but as far as I knew, he wasn't very generous. She had to beg and plead even for a pair of shoes. "Sure, don't forget to let me have a look when your bag arrives," I replied. Meredith responded with an okay emoji. However, during lunch the next day, my roommate Winifred whispered to me, "Velvet, do you think Meredith got jealous because your mom sent you that bag?" I was taken aback. "Why do you say that?" Today, Meredith was showing me some memes on her phone when a message from an online seller popped up. Meredith bought a fake Hermes from her last night for over £80. Meredith's monthly allowance was about £150. Spending over £80 on a fake bag that people would mock seemed utterly foolish. On the weekend, Meredith brought in a parcel and opened her Hermes in front of us. I couldn't help but say, "Meredith, since when does Hermes use plastic bags for packaging?" Her smile stiffened a bit. I don't like fancy packaging, so I asked my boyfriend to request simple packaging. After watching the commotion, I went downstairs for my date. William and I were classmates who had secretly fancied each other for 3 years before finally getting together at university. He attended a medical school in the same city, about a half-hour drive from me. William stood in the shade of a tree, wearing his invariable white t-shirt. He was tall and slender, with a handsome, refined appearance. I jogged over to him. "Have you been waiting long?" "Not at all," William replied, taking my hand with a gentle smile. After dinner, we strolled hand in hand around the square. It wasn't until we had completed a lap that I belatedly realized today was Valentine's Day. No wonder there were so many girls selling flowers on the street. As we passed a florist, William's grip on my hand tightened slightly. He turned to look at me. "Shall we buy a bouquet?" I shook my head. "No, they're expensive and impractical, and it would be too conspicuous to bring back to the dormitory." William chuckled resignedly. "I thought you might say that." Then, while walking me back to university, he took me to collect a gift he had arranged to store at a shop beforehand. Because I often complained to him about how hot the dormitory bed was and how uncomfortable the cooling mat felt, he had bought me a Low-of cooling mat. As I marveled at how thoughtful and practical the gift was, I casually asked about the price. After hearing it, I fell silent. To reciprocate his gift, I would have to tighten my belt for the next few days. After seeing William off, I carried the new cooling mat upstairs. As soon as I entered the dormitory, I spotted Meredith getting ready to go out. She was all dolled up, clearly preparing for a date. Seeing me, Meredith gave me a once-over and asked teasingly, "Back so soon?" "It's Valentine's Day. Didn't your boyfriend get you a gift?" "He did," I replied, tossing the cooling mat onto my bed. "Here it is." Meredith came over to take a look, then covered her mouth as she laughed. "Oh Velvet, your boyfriend is such a bloke. Who gives their girlfriend a cooling mat for Valentine's Day?" After she finished laughing, she started giving me unsolicited advice. "Velvet, it's okay for guys to be a bit clueless, but he shouldn't be so stingy. You need to guide him slowly. Isn't the point of dating to get your boyfriend to spend money on you?" I smiled and took a sip from the water bottle on my desk. Nonchalantly, I said, "I don't think my boyfriend is stingy at all. This cooling mat wasn't cheap." Meredith chuckled. "My boyfriend spent over £100 on a necklace for me, and he bought me a handbag yesterday." "How much could this silly cooling mat be worth?" "It's not that expensive," I replied casually. "This silly cooling mat only cost about £3,600. Meredith's smile froze on her lips. £3,600? She exclaimed in disbelief. "Who are you trying to fool? It's just a cooling mat. You can buy one for a few quid outside the university." I remained silent and simply showed her the logo. Meredith, still skeptical, picked up her phone and started searching. A few minutes later, her face fell, and she muttered uncomfortably, "Spending over $3,000 on a bloody cooling mat, what a mug." I leisurely put down my water glass and said seriously, "My boyfriend is no mug, he's just wealthy." After a moment's thought, I twisted the knife, and he's not afraid to spend on me. Over $3,000 for a cooling mat, just so I can sleep more comfortably. Where else would you find a boyfriend like that? Meredith said nothing, laughing awkwardly before walking away. I was in high spirits. That night, Meredith didn't come back to the dorm. She sent a message to Tori, our dorm's good girl, saying she had something on and couldn't return for the night. She asked Tori to cover for her during room check. Tori was a sweet girl from a small town, with modest family circumstances. She was usually very frugal and gentle. Meredith knew she could count on Tori's kindness, which is why she called to ask for help. The next day, Meredith skipped classes and didn't return until the afternoon. She was positively glowing. Moreover, she was sporting a new bag from a certain luxury brand, not cheap at a few £1,000s. Meredith's second-generation boyfriend had suddenly become generous with her, and notably, after she'd spent the night out. This was hardly something to be proud of, yet Meredith couldn't help showing off, parading around with her new bag. Little did she know, rumors were already flying around campus. A fortnight later, it was Meredith Seabrook's birthday. She announced that her wealthy boyfriend would be treating our entire flat to dinner, emphasizing that we should bring our boyfriends along. The reservation was for 7 p.m. at a French restaurant near the university. I had been to this place with friends before. The food was excellent, but it wasn't cheap. As we settled in, we finally met Meredith's well-to-do boyfriend, Aubrey Cargill. Aubrey looked like the typical rich kid. While I'm not particularly knowledgeable about luxury brands, even I could recognize the glaring Gucci logo. Meredith deliberately handed me the menu. "Velvet, darling, what would you like to eat?" I didn't take it. "You go ahead and order first." Meredith smirked, probably thinking I'd chickened out. She said nothing and passed the menu back to Aubrey, but Aubrey was engrossed in his phone. "You order first," he said dismissively. Meredith hesitated, and when she tried to hand it back, Aubrey's furrowed brow betrayed his annoyance. Meredith had no choice but to reluctantly open the menu. It was entirely in French, with no English translation. After a quick scan, she pointed at the menu. "I'll have this." The waiter looked at her with an awkward expression. "I'm sorry, madam, that's the name of our restaurant." An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. To ease the tension, Meredith forced a smile. "It's my birthday today. Let's order a bottle of wine, shall we?" The waiter, being quite perceptive, immediately flipped to the wine list. Meredith glanced over it and pointed to one of the options. "We'll have a bottle of this 1945 red wine, please." The waiter paused for a moment before quietly correcting her. "I'm sorry, madam, 1945 is the price." I couldn't help but curl my lips into a subtle smile. Hearing the price, Meredith seemed uncertain and glanced at Aubrey. Aubrey finally looked up. "It's fine, go ahead and order it." At least this young gentleman wasn't stingy with money. Perhaps feeling embarrassed by Meredith's faux pas, Aubrey took the menu and ordered for both of them. Humiliated, Meredith grabbed the menu and thrust it at me again. So, I casually flipped through it, choosing the restaurant's specialties for starters and main course, which I had enjoyed on my previous visit. When I passed the menu to William Stanworth, he didn't even look at it. He closed it and said, "I'll have the same as what she just ordered, please." From the other side of the table came a low chuckle. I looked up. It was Meredith. I was a bit exasperated. William has decision anxiety and never likes to order. Surely Meredith didn't think William couldn't understand the menu too? By now, the waiter had passed the menu to Tori Fairling, who was sitting to my right. Tori accepted it with a flustered look. As the host of the evening, Meredith didn't help her out. Instead, she waited with a smirk, expecting Tori to make a fool of herself too. I couldn't stand by and watch, so I spoke up for her. "Why don't you have the same as me? I've ordered their specialties, and I've had them before. They're quite good." Tori sighed in relief. "That sounds lovely." Meredith, unable to contain herself any longer, chimed in, "This restaurant is very expensive, Velvet." "When have you been here before?" I didn't feel like engaging with her and replied flatly, "I came with a friend." "Your friend must be quite wealthy to bring you here." "Doesn't your boyfriend get jealous?" she said with a smirk, her implication clear. I really couldn't be bothered to respond, nor did I feel the need to tell her that the friend I mentioned was a girl and that I had actually paid for that meal. Throughout the dinner, Meredith seemed a bit frustrated. Her attempt to show off had backfired, and she'd ended up embarrassing herself instead. At the table, Meredith barely touched her food, focusing instead on drinking the 1945-pound bottle of wine. And then, later that night, as the alcohol began to take effect, Meredith dragged the three of us out of our beds. With her arms crossed, she declared, "My boyfriend isn't obligated to treat you to dinner. We're splitting the bill, so make sure you transfer me your share." I rubbed my eyes, feeling the sleepiness dissipate slightly. Beside me, Tori Fairling was on the verge of tears. Her family wasn't well off, and she was always very frugal in her daily life. If it weren't for Meredith Seabrook's insistence, she would never have agreed to such an expensive meal. Tori panicked, "I don't have that much money." Meredith was truly drunk and rolled her eyes, "If you don't have money, why did you come to eat?" I couldn't stand it anymore. "We didn't want to go, but you kept pestering us to come. Besides, Tori even gave you a gift. How about we transfer you the money for the meal, but let Tori off?" Meredith sneered, "Gift? You mean that jar of paper stars? How much could that possibly be worth? Come on," she looked at Tori, "what era are we living in, sis? Who gives such things as birthday gifts anymore?" Tori's face turned red, unable to speak. I felt my anger rising. "Fine, then how about this? We'll pay you for the meal in full, and you return the birthday gift. How's that?" Meredith shrugged. I threw it away. I knew she had. Because earlier today, I happened to see her tossing the gift into the rubbish bin downstairs from a distance. I deliberately said, "No worries, if you've thrown it away, let's settle it with cash. We'll transfer you the money for the meal, and you transfer us the value of the gift." "Fair enough." Without a second thought, Meredith agreed. In her mind, the gifts we gave weren't worth much at all. Tori, being short on money, had given her a jar full of handmade paper stars. I had personally seen her staying up for several nights to finish folding them. Another roommate, Gwendolyn Avery, whose family was also of modest means, had given her a cute plush toy. Meredith laughed and immediately transferred £10 to each of them on her phone. "I've sent you the money for your gifts." Now, transfer me the money for the meal. Let's not bother with the odd pence. The meal totaled £500, split between 6 people. Each of you transfer me £80. I tapped her shoulder. Haven't you forgotten to calculate my gift? Meredith scoffed. Yours? That burlap bag? I'm being generous giving you £10 for that. I'll send you £5. Burlap bag? Have you ever seen a burlap bag worth over £1,000? Meredith was stunned. My hand on her shoulder tightened slightly. Why don't you look it up yourself? It's a Balenciaga Barb's tote bag, worth £1,300. This bag was a gift from my aunt. I had kept it unused in my wardrobe for months because it was too ugly. Since it was brand new, I decided to give it to her as a birthday gift. I withdrew my hand and held up my phone with the payment QR code in front of Meredith. I'll cover the meal cost for the 3 of us. That's £240 in total. I won't bother you with the odd pence either. Just transfer me £1,000 and we're even. Meredith was stunned. A few seconds later, she resorted to her usual tactic, playing dumb. You say it's £1,000 just because you say so? Got any proof? I reckon that rubbish bag's worth 30 quid at most. I laughed. As it happens, I do. Saying this, I turned to rummage through the wardrobe drawer and pulled out the receipt for that bag. If Meredith had ever opened the gift and looked inside the bag, she wouldn't have missed this receipt, let alone the glaring price on it. The receipt had always been in the bag's inner pocket. I hadn't opened it. It wasn't until today when I fished it out of the bin that I casually opened it and saw. Come to think of it, this bag was rather pitiful. It cost a pretty penny, but in the months it had been in my possession, if I hadn't rescued it from the rubbish, I wouldn't have given it a second glance. Meredith clutched the receipt, looking as if she wanted to tear it up, but I was quicker and snatched it back. No joke, this was evidence. Though, to be honest, I'd quietly retrieved all 3 of our gifts. They were bought with money, after all. How could we just throw them away? So, after my coercion and intimidation, Meredith caved. You bought this bag months ago. Why should I give you £1,300? How about this? Let's meet halfway. I threw away the gift, so I won't ask you for the dinner money. Deal? I agreed. After all, I'd rescued all 3 gifts. I couldn't really ask her for 1,000 quid. However, perhaps I agreed too quickly, making her suspicious, or maybe she was just annoyed. Either way, after that day, Meredith started badmouthing me all over the class. Saying that for her birthday, I'd given her a fake bag and then tried to con her out of £1,000. Hearing this, I couldn't help but laugh. Meredith Seabrook was dumped by her boyfriend just 2 days after her birthday. Whether it was because she had embarrassed herself in public that day, or Aubrey Cargill had simply grown tired of her, their breakup came out of the blue. After failing to reconcile, Meredith buried herself under her duvet and sobbed uncontrollably. However, a few days after their breakup, someone saw Aubrey taking the most popular girl on campus to a posh hotel near the university, where the minimum spend for a night was several £100s. Thinking back to the mid-range designer bag Meredith had once proudly shown off, and comparing it to the Louis Vuitton the campus beauty was now sporting on Aubrey's arm, Meredith instantly became an object of pity among her peers. However, half a month after being dumped, she suddenly seemed to bounce back to life, apparently having found a new boyfriend. Strangely, when senior students occasionally came to check the dorms, they would automatically skip over Meredith's bed, as if they had been instructed to do so beforehand. Moreover, Meredith's financial situation had noticeably improved recently. While she wasn't buying luxury items, the quality of her food, clothes, and general lifestyle had certainly gone up. And then, the list for university bursaries was released. Tori Fairling came from a poor family background and always lived frugally. Everyone assumed it was a given that she would receive a bursary. But this year, Tori's bursary was snatched away by someone else. That someone was Meredith Seabrook. While Meredith's family wasn't wealthy, they weren't struggling either. By all accounts, she shouldn't have qualified for a bursary. Something was fishy about this situation, so at Tori's insistence, I accompanied her to speak with the teacher. We had intended to simply ask for clarification, but unexpectedly, the teacher's attitude was extremely rigid. He first gave an official response, saying that the bursary list was compiled based on his investigation and understanding of the students' family conditions, along with the bursary application forms submitted by these students, which were then selected by the school. However, when Tori asked to see Meredith's bursary application form, the teacher's demeanor changed. He coldly threatened that the list was determined by the school, and if Tori continued to make unreasonable demands, he would have no choice but to take her to the school administration. As I listened, my blood began to boil. Just as I was about to speak up, Tori timidly cut in. "I understand, sir. Sorry to bother you," she said, and started to pull me away. I couldn't help but blurt out, "You actually believe this?" It was clearly a bogus explanation. We were just asking for an explanation. How could that escalate to involving the administration? Only a pushover like Tori would believe such nonsense. Once out of the office, Tori let go of my hand and quickly headed back to the dorm. When we returned, I found Tori sitting on her bed, crying, her shoulders shaking. I'm not usually one to meddle in others' affairs, but at this moment, I felt frustrated with her lack of backbone. What's the point of crying now? Back in the office, you let him scare you off with just a couple of words. He was just. Before I could finish, Tori suddenly interrupted me, sobbing as she shouted. "You think everyone's like you? With rich parents who dote on you, you don't have to worry about anything. You can make a fuss whenever you want." I was stunned by her outburst. It was completely uncalled for. This back and forth left me feeling incredibly annoyed. As expected, it's best not to get involved in other people's business. For the next 2 days, the atmosphere in the dorm was particularly tense. The only one who seemed happy was Meredith. She had always been showy, and within days of receiving the bursary, she went straight to the shopping center. She came back flaunting a head-to-toe new outfit, carrying a bunch of shopping bags. The logos on the bags were particularly eye-catching. This incident sparked a lot of gossip among the students, but Meredith couldn't care less. What I didn't expect was that there would be more to come regarding this bursary business. One afternoon, as I was sitting on my bed applying a face mask, the dorm door was suddenly kicked open. Meredith stormed in, fuming with anger. "Velvet, you just can't stand me, can you?" she accused, launching into a tirade without preamble. I looked up at her, face mask still on. "What's wrong with you?" she sneered. "Don't pretend." After a brief pause, she changed her tone. "Someone told me it was you who wrote that letter reporting me. Now I've lost my bursary, and I might even face disciplinary action. Are you satisfied now?" Hearing her question, I nodded honestly. "Although this matter doesn't concern me, it sounds quite satisfactory," I replied. Meredith Seabrook was stunned for a moment, then lunged at me, attempting to hit me. Being a regular at the gym, I effortlessly overpowered her and gave her a taste of her own medicine. Well, that was the end of our fake friendship as flatmates. Meredith, both angry and embarrassed, moved out of the dormitory in a fit of rage. I heard she found herself a new boyfriend. Apparently, he's some older chap in his 30s. Of course, I wouldn't waste my time inquiring about such matters, but I was rather intrigued by what Meredith had mentioned that day. The way she had confronted me so aggressively didn't seem like an act. Someone must have impersonated me and sent a report to the university. Who could it be? The answer was obvious without even guessing. Of course, it was just my suspicion. I had asked Tori Fairling about it, but being the timid girl she is, the fleeting panic in her eyes was evident, yet she stubbornly denied any involvement. There was no concrete evidence to pursue the matter further, and I couldn't be bothered to press her, so I decided to let it go for now. On Friday afternoon, I suddenly received a call from my dad. "Are you hungry?" he asked. "Starving," I replied. "Come on then, I'll treat you to that steak place you love." My dad paused, slightly out of breath. "I'm waiting at the back gate of your university." I rushed out, but when we met, I finally understood why he sounded winded. My old man had actually cycled here. He's a fitness enthusiast and particularly fond of various sports, especially cycling. I stood beside him, just about to call out Dad when I spotted someone, Meredith Seabrook. Meredith seemed a bit surprised, her gaze sweeping over my dad's sportswear of indiscernible brand, finally landing on his bicycle. A barely noticeable smirk played on her lips. She quickly averted her gaze and hurried away. However, she didn't get to hear the conversation that followed between my dad and me. Me, what's with this rubbish bike? It doesn't even have a back seat. Should I sit on the crossbar and you can give me a lift? My dad looked like he wanted to kick me away. What are you on about? This bike cost your old man over 30 grand. You want to sit on the crossbar? My dad and I then proceeded to mock each other over this issue. I called him a mug, he said I knew nothing. In the end, we walked to the restaurant, pushing the bicycle. That day, my mug of a father pushed his 27,000-pound PG bicycle to treat me to a 58-pound steak, all while quietly grumbling about how expensive the meat was. I knew Meredith Seabrook held a grudge against me because of the scholarship incident, so I wasn't surprised when she tried to frame me as a thief. A week after Meredith moved out of our dormitory, she suddenly returned at noon to collect some belongings. However, when she opened her unlocked wardrobe, she suddenly cried out that her recently purchased perfume and skincare products were missing. Without any pretense, she ran straight to me and demanded, "Velvet, tell me, did you steal them?" I scratched my ear, slightly irritated. "No, I didn't." But Meredith wouldn't let it go, insisting that I open my cabinet for her inspection. My patience wearing thin, I frowned and asked, what brands were the perfume and skincare products? Meredith tilted her chin up. The perfume was Dior, and the skincare products were brand new, unopened Estee Lauder. I remained silent. I had no interest in skincare products, yet I had a mother who was passionate about forcing her cosmetics on me. Under Meredith's relentless pestering, I stood up, opened my cabinet, and pulled out several brand new, untouched skincare sets, Helena Rubinstein, La Mer. All of them were products my mom had bought, disliked, and forced upon me. Seeing Meredith's stunned expression, I turned to her and asked, "These are probably more expensive than what you lost, aren't they? Why would I need to steal yours?" Embarrassed and angry, she insisted on searching my suitcase, claiming it was for inspection. I refused. Our argument quickly attracted the attention of Mrs. Latham, the dorm matron. After learning what had happened, she offered to check herself, and I agreed. Mrs. Latham rummaged through my wardrobe without success, but Meredith then pointed to the suitcase under my bed. "Mrs. Latham, she has another suitcase that's always locked. Who knows what might be hidden in there?" The matron pulled out my suitcase and handed it to me to unlock. However, when the suitcase was opened, there were a few clothes scattered inside. Mrs. Latham casually rummaged through them but pulled out a bottle of perfume. Dior. Mrs. Latham paused, glancing at me before pulling out a box of skincare products from under the clothes. They were the exact brands Meredith claimed to have lost. In an instant, I became a thief caught red-handed. I came to my senses and turned to look at Tori. Only she knew the passcode to my suitcase. Perhaps feeling guilty, Tori turned her head away the moment I looked at her, avoiding eye contact. "Tori, why?" I couldn't understand why she would team up with Meredith to frame me when it was Meredith who had stolen her scholarship. But Tori just kept her head turned, refusing to speak. I knew the truth of the matter but had no evidence to prove it. Our earlier argument had already drawn quite a crowd from the surrounding dorms. My image as a thief was instantly solidified and spread. Meredith, clearly out for revenge, wasn't about to let this go. She took the matter to Mr. Latham, our head of house. In the office, Barclay Latham coldly eyed me, his gaze sweeping over the evidence on the desk. "Velvet, I used to think you were such a good girl. I understand you want to look pretty, but you can't steal from others." Without investigation or inquiry, he directly determined my guilt and demanded I write a self-criticism admitting to theft. I coldly refused with a sneer. Did he think I was stupid? If I wrote that confession, there would be no way to prove my innocence. Besides, the school takes theft very seriously. Barkley sat in his chair, looking up at me. Velvet, don't say I didn't warn you. If you admit your mistake now, while the matter hasn't escalated, you'll just write a letter of self-criticism. If this reaches the department level, I won't be able to help you even if I wanted to. The atmosphere was tense, but I found it amusing. Mr. Latham, I'm not Tori Fairling. I'm not so easily intimidated. If you can investigate, then please do so quickly and clear my name. If you can't investigate, either bring the headmistress here so we can examine this publicly, or I'll call the police right now. Barkley laughed, irritated. Velvet, don't say I didn't warn you. If you insist on taking this to the headmistress, it won't just be a matter of writing a self-criticism letter. I met his gaze. So, shall we call the headmistress then? Barkley didn't move. I raised an eyebrow and took out my phone. You won't call? Then I will. As I finished speaking, I dialed the number. The call was quickly answered. Headmistress Farrington, could you please come to Mr. Latham's office? I've been falsely accused of theft and need you to investigate. I hung up after speaking. Sitting at the desk, I smiled at Barkley across from me. Care to guess why the headmistress and I share the same surname? Barkley was speechless. Because the headmistress is my aunt, my father's sister. The office was empty except for the three of us. Barkley's expression began to change. He seemed to want to speak several times but hesitated. If it were just a misunderstanding about me, he wouldn't be this nervous. I guessed he had other matters he feared the headmistress might uncover. As for what those matters might be, I glanced at Meredith Seabrook beside me, who also looked a bit nervous, and suddenly had an inkling. Aunt Rowena arrived quickly. She closed the door, first giving me a concerned look, then turning her gaze to Barkley Latham and Meredith Seabrook. Mr. Latham hurriedly stood up, but Aunt Rowena went straight to sit at the empty desk on the other side. Usually, Aunt Rowena doesn't allow me to reveal our relationship at school. But today, hearing that I had been wronged, she came faster than anyone else. As she sat at the desk, I could still hear her breathing heavily. Tell me, what happened? She asked. Aunt Rowena is a very serious middle-aged woman, but then again, considering she's the one who gave me that sack bag, this personality isn't surprising. Mr. Latham reluctantly gave a slightly embellished account of me stealing Meredith's skincare products. When she heard exactly what I had stolen, Aunt Rowena let out a derisive laugh. There was a hint of disdain in it. She looked at me and asked, "Who knows the password to your suitcase?" "My other roommate," I replied. Aunt Rowena nodded, "Take me to see her." So, Aunt Rowena, as the headmistress, met with Tori Fairling alone. No one knows what she said to Tori. But in less than 15 minutes, Tori confessed everything. She had been threatened by Meredith to secretly put the items Meredith had given her earlier into my suitcase when no one was in the dormitory, in order to frame me. In the office, I was very confused. Why? Tori was crying heavily. She told me the reason, which was actually quite simple. Meredith had threatened her with the scholarship and next year's bursary. Meredith told Tori that she had a special relationship with Mr. Latham, and whether Tori could get the scholarship was entirely up to her say-so. Tori cried as she held my hand. Velvet, please, I beg you, don't make a big deal out of this. I'm my family's only hope. What if this blows up and I get expelled? She cried miserably, saying she was just confused for a moment. But I didn't feel an ounce of pity for her. She was confused for a moment. But did she ever consider me? If I didn't have an aunt who was the headmistress, if I hadn't called the police when it happened, if I had written a self-criticism under Mr. Latham's threats and coercion, wouldn't I have been disciplined or even expelled for theft too? Isn't everyone their family's hope? I could say I'm the hope of my entire village. Besides, I had given her enough chances. So, I shook off her hand and left everything to the school to handle. Unexpectedly, the school gave me a surprise. Once investigated, this incident implicated some other matters, such as the overly intimate relationship between Meredith and Mr. Latham. Once this was verified, the school immediately took serious action. Mr. Latham was suspended, Meredith was expelled for her lifestyle issues and for instigating others to steal and frame, and Tori was also given a disciplinary warning. As the farce ended, I was in high spirits, while Meredith looked very upset. At the end, as she was leaving, she left me with a threatening remark, "Velvet Farrington, we'll see about this." I watched her leave with a smile, not taking her words to heart. Sure, take care. However, I didn't expect that not only did Meredith not regret her actions, but after being expelled, she viciously spread rumors about me. It had been less than a month since Meredith Seabrook dropped out of school when I suddenly became infamous. A video of me changing clothes appeared abruptly on various social media platforms at our school. Fortunately, I wasn't completely naked in the video. The secretly recorded footage showed me changing in an empty dormitory room, revealing my underwear, and my face was clearly visible throughout. I learned about this from my roommate, Gwendolyn Avery. Gritting my teeth, I watched the entire video and then glanced at the comments section. It was appalling. Many male students commented, saying I had staged it myself just to gain attention. Some girls pointed out that I was obviously being secretly filmed while changing in the dorm and called for a thorough investigation of the perpetrator. But their voices were quickly drowned out by mocking remarks. My whole body trembled, and I could barely hold my phone. Meredith. It must have been her. Recalling what she had said before leaving, I became even more certain. However, just as I was desperately trying to figure out how to delete those videos, I suddenly received a call from William Stanworth. After hesitating, I finally answered. I tried my best to sound calm. "Where are you?" "I'm on my way," he said, his tone low and unusually serious. It seemed he had found out. The thought of William seeing that video and those online comments suddenly made me feel embarrassed. My nose stung, and tears began to fall. I struggled to keep myself from making any sound, but William noticed anyway. He was silent for 2 seconds, then spoke in a hoarse voice, "Velvet, don't cry. When you cry, I feel like killing someone." His voice was low as he said, "Don't worry, I'll take care of everything." After hanging up, I obediently went downstairs. Within 10 minutes, William appeared in my line of sight. He rushed over, looking disheveled, and pulled me into his arms. "Don't be afraid, I'll handle this," he said. I nodded, my eyes stinging badly, not knowing what to say. Initially, I had only felt humiliated and angry, but now that he was here, I felt utterly miserable. William arranged for me to take time off and drove me home. On the way, he carefully comforted me and told me that before coming, he had already asked his family's company to help handle the situation. William's family runs an internet company with extensive connections, so dealing with these matters shouldn't be too difficult. That night, William and I talked on the phone until late, until I fell asleep. When I woke up, the first thing I did was grab my phone. William hadn't lied to me. All traces of that video of me were completely gone. All related comments had been wiped clean, as if nothing had ever happened. However, William said we couldn't pretend it never happened. He said, "Velvet, let's go to the police." "I'll come with you." I nodded. I reported it to the police. I had saved the video and all the posts exposing it online as evidence. Since Meredith was the prime suspect, she was immediately taken to the police station for questioning. In just one day, the interrogation yielded results. The video had been secretly recorded by Meredith. After moving out of the dormitory, she harbored resentment towards me for reporting her about the scholarship. So she secretly bought a pinhole camera and hid it opposite my bed. After successfully recording a compromising video of me changing clothes, she snuck back into the dorm to retrieve the recording. However, she wasn't the one who spread the video. According to Meredith's confession, she held onto the video of me, hesitating several times but not daring to release it because she knew it was a criminal act. While the video would damage my reputation if released. But after being expelled, she met a rich boyfriend at a nearby internet cafe. Her boyfriend was wealthy but fickle and wanted to dump her after just a few days together. To keep her boyfriend's interest, Meredith sent him my video for his entertainment. It was her new boyfriend who spread the video, and it spiraled out of control. I heard that when Meredith's parents rushed here from out of town, they were furious. They came to the school again, crying and begging me to drop the charges. I pushed away Meredith's mother's hand as she sobbed uncontrollably. We don't understand these things, but if you choose not to press charges, Meredith might get a lighter sentence. She's only 20, her future is just beginning. I couldn't bear to hear this, so I turned and walked away. Her future may be just beginning, but isn't everyone's? If I gave up pursuing this, I would be letting down myself for enduring all that humiliation. And even more so William, who trembled with rage that day saying he wanted to kill someone. People should never play the saint. Before leaving, I slipped a tissue into her hand. This was probably the most kindness I could muster. Our school recently had a new internet sensation. A handsome lad who's gone viral online. All the school's social media platforms are buzzing with news about him. To be honest, his looks aren't what's important. What matters is that his sudden fame has washed away the attention from that video of me changing clothes. The anxiety that had been hanging over me finally began to subside. Especially after Gwendolyn Avery said something to me. She said, "Don't fret, darling. Think about it, you were in your underwear in the video. Who hasn't worn a bikini when swimming? Those people are making a fuss over nothing." It was like a light bulb moment for me. She's right. Wearing underwear, how's that different from wearing a swimsuit? I completely let go of that worry and continued my shameless romance with William Stanworth. Suddenly, I realized William was quite unfortunate. When other couples go on dates, the girlfriends always dress up nicely, but in all our dates, I hadn't even worn a dress once. So, I tentatively asked him, should I wear a dress for our cinema date tomorrow? No need, William said gently. Wear whatever you like. I love you in anything. But other boyfriends love seeing their girlfriends in pretty dresses. I started to say. He interrupted me with a soft chuckle. But I don't fancy dresses. I fancy you.